Hey there, let's talk about beer. No, not just any kind of beer, but the history of beer. How it went from being a staple food to the beverage that is synonymous with football, frustration, fan rituals, and friendship. And let me tell you right now, this won't be your ordinary beer tour. We will start by talking about the different types of beers, because we're not going to be doing a tasting today. No, we'll go back to where it all began. Origin of beer, the world's oldest cultural beverage. First, traces Mesopotamia, c. 5000 to 6000 BC. But the story of beer goes back even further to when humans started storing their grains, because while they were storing them, sometimes they didn't store them properly. And if they didn't store them properly, what happened? They would get wet and they would start sprouting. So then people noticed that if they boiled those sprouted grains, they got a very bitter taste. So they stopped storing their grains like that. But one person said, hey, wait a minute, let's boil those sprouted grains. And then they did, and they found out that, wow, it actually tastes good. So that's how beer was born, a chance product that eventually became the oldest cultural beverage in human history. It's considered to be older than wine, older than cheese, older than bread. In ancient Egypt, for example, beer was considered a staple food. Around 1800 BC, they were already building breweries into their tombs, so that they had beer in the afterlife. In ancient Samaria, beer was used as a form of payment. The workers were paid in beer. In ancient Rome, beer was used as medicine. So basically, you could say that beer has been around since the beginning of mankind. But our story begins a little later during the Middle Ages. And as I said, it was a chance product, but quickly became one of the most important beverages. Not only was it a delicious drink, but it was also much safer to drink than water. 2. Middle Ages and monasteries. Beer brewing becomes religious. But who brewed this beer back then? Well, oftentimes it was the monasteries. And that's why in Germany especially, you have the Trappist beers, the Benedictines beers. The monks actually brewed their own beer, and they brewed it according to very strict rules. From around the 8th century onwards, the monks were not allowed to make any alcoholic beverages, but they were allowed to brew beer. So they became the connoisseurs of beer. They learned how to brew the best quality beer. And we still have these recipes today. And then around the 9th century, something big happened in the world of beer. Until then, beer was made with just water, barley, and yeast. But then hops were introduced into the mix. Hops gave the beer a longer shelf life, but also made it taste better. Before that, beer was pretty much undrinkable after 3 months. After 3 months, it was sour, but with hops, it could last up to a year. And then with the introduction of hops, beer went from being a weak drink to being an alcoholic beverage. And that's why during Lent, when the monks weren't allowed to drink wine or any other alcoholic beverages, they drank beer. They called it liquid bread. Beer in Germany, purity law, and popular drink. The monasteries continued brewing beer until the Reformation. Then it became more of a secular drink. But in Germany, the Bavarian purity law of 1516 stated that beer could only be made with water, barley, and hops. That's why the German beer is some of the best quality beer in the world. Only natural ingredients are used. No additives, no preservatives. And that's why throughout Germany, you have these different types of beers: the Alt, the Klush, the Pils, the wheat beer, etc. Of course, they all taste great. But which one is your favorite, if you've tried any? Personally, I like the wheat beer. Something else that came out of this time was the breweries. The breweries became the social centers of the towns. Everyone would go there, not only to drink beer, but to meet friends, to talk about the latest news. And that's why, to this day, many breweries also have the beer cellars, where you can go and sit down and drink beer. In fact, I went to one last week, and it was so nice to sit there, drink a nice cold glass of beer, listen to some Oompa music. It really felt like I'd stepped back in time. During the Middle Ages, beer was part of daily life, part of German identity. So it's no surprise that in Germany today, they take their beer very seriously. In fact, they have the saying, beer is the proof that God loves us. And I think that's true. If God hadn't wanted us to drink beer, he wouldn't have invented it. But then something amazing happened. Beer left the breweries and entered people's homes. That's when industrialization changed everything. Industrialization. From craftsmanship to mass production. With technological progress came bigger breweries, cooler ways to keep the beer cool, pasteurization to keep it fresh, and finally, bottled beer, so that you could take the brewery experience home with you. That's when giants like Beck's, Bitburger, Löwenbräu, Warsteiner, Franziskaner, Augustiner, Paulaner, Spaten, Hacker, Peshor, Veltins, all these great breweries were founded. That's also when beer went from being a home drink to becoming a stadium drink, and that's when beer went global. In the 19th and 20th century, these breweries exported beer to every corner of the world. But not only were these companies mass-producing beer, they were also creating brands. And brands need to sell something more than just a product. They need to sell an experience, they need to sell emotions. 5. Advertising and branding. beer becomes emotional. And that's why beer ads always have some kind of story behind them. You have the classic Volkswagen ad with the football player who kicks the ball into his beer. You have the classic Opel ad with the man looking through the window at the couple dancing. Or my personal favorite, the classic Macassin ad with the elephant drinking a beer. Why do you think these ads were so popular? Because they created an emotional connection with the audience. These ads didn't just say, "Drink our beer," they said, "Drink our beer, and you will feel happy. You will feel part of a community." And that's why today, if you look at the biggest clubs in Germany, their main sponsors are beer brands. Bitburger sponsors Borussia Dortmund, Kronbacher sponsors Bayer Leverkusen, and Heineken sponsors Bayern Munich, and it's no coincidence that these deals are worth millions. But then something incredible happened. Beer went from being a drink you took home to being an intrinsic part of the stadium experience. 6. Beer and football. The emergence of stadium culture. Beer and football have always gone hand in hand. I mean, remember those classic scenes in movies where the team scores and everyone runs into the street to celebrate? What do they celebrate with? Beer. When fans are so frustrated they throw their beer mugs, they don't throw them with water, they throw them with beer. But what has become known as the Bayer shower happened in 2002 in the World Cup final between Brazil and Germany. After Ronaldo scored his second goal, the Brazilian fans in the stadium opened their shirts and poured their beers over themselves. And then the next time Brazil scored, the fans started pouring beer over each other. And then this became a thing, a way to show how happy they were, a way to celebrate togetherness. Another tradition is the beer mug throwing. Again, this doesn't happen with water, it happens with beer, because beer symbolizes frustration. And that's why in Germany today, you can visit the German Beer Museum and pay €1 to throw a beer mug against the wall. And of course, you can't forget halftime beer. This is a beer that is served during halftime and it is considered to be the best beer in the world. At least that's what the British say. But again, it's not just a beer. It's a ritual. It's a community. It's an identity. Modern beer culture, craft beer, trends, and globalization. Today, we live in a globalized world where anyone can buy any type of beer from any country in the world. But recently, there has been a shift towards craft beers. It all started in the USA in the late 70s, and then it spread to Europe, and then the rest of the world. People were getting tired of the big brands, the mass production. They wanted something new, something innovative, something local. They wanted quality. They wanted That's why today in Germany, you have the non-alcoholic beer, the vegan beer, the organic breweries, the microbreweries, all these different trends. But no matter what trend there is, the bottom line is, it's still Bayer. And that's why to this day beer festivals are held all over the world. From the famous Oktoberfest in Munich to the Great American Beer Festival, beer has become a truly global drink. But our story started in the monasteries, and that's why it's fitting that we end this journey right here, right now. Because in the end, beer is more than just a beverage. Sure, it gets you drunk, but it's also a social drink, a cultural drink, an emotional drink. It connects past and present. It brings people together. It transforms an everyday drink into an experience factor. It's a liquid with bubbles that makes life a bit more bubbly. So what does beer mean to you? Write it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. See you next time.